Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashin Kumar. The US, under the previous administration, has been unambiguously supportive of Ukraine in its defense against the invasion by Russia. Hundreds of billions of dollars of military materiel and training have been provided to Ukraine to fight its war. The newly inaugurated US President Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been vocal in his commitment to end the conflict. He famously promised to end it within 24 hours. This was later extended to 6 months. So what happens now? Well, to explore this question, I'm joined by Bohdan Nahaylo, Chief Editor of Kyiv Post and a regular contributor. Bohdan, welcome back to TVP World. Thanks for taking the time.
It's a pleasure to be with you again.
Thank you. So, what's the mood in Ukraine after the inauguration? What are people thinking?
Well, the first reactions I've got from my colleagues and those who have been speaking to others is that there's a great deal of anxiety and uncertainty remaining. There seems to be a slight shift in Trump's position from his rigid stop the war now and let's stop the funding for Ukraine a month or 2 or 3 ago, especially before the election. Now it seems to be one of we have to get the Russians to reach an agreement. I mean, yesterday after his inauguration, when facing journalists while signing various instructions dealing with domestic issues, he was asked by journalists about ending the war, and he made a comment about Putin having to reach a deal because what is happening to Russia is very damaging, that they've lost about 1 million people, killed or wounded, and the economy is suffering. So he hinted that there is resistance in Moscow to reach a fair compromise of some sort, as fair as the Americans would see it. And he also made the point that Zelensky is willing to search for a deal, whereas Moscow appears not to be. That is a change in his attitude, because before it was sort of more or less forcing Ukraine to do as Washington under Trump would like him to do.
Understood. So you see this as a shift in Trump's attitude, putting more of the onus on Putin, Putin's execution of the war, and simply saying, well, look, Zelensky's at the table, he's sitting there waiting, and Putin's taking his time, and this is not good for Russia. Now, interesting, came across some statistics from the ECFR, EU poll, and 82% of Ukrainians that were asked either agreed or were undecided when asked the question whether Trump would be good for peace in this world. Now, this, I mean, does that surprise you, that number there, 82%?
No, it doesn't. Look, there's a great deal of uncertainty. As we know, Trump is very much about egocentricity, me, I'm at the center of everything. You know, he was saved from assassination to make America great again. And there's a lot of bluster there. The question for Ukrainians is, you know, he's promising so much, more or less for America, but forcing NATO allies, you know, to pay up as he sees it, and but at the same time saying that this is going to be a golden age for America first. The question in Ukraine is, well, why wasn't this a golden age during your first period? You had for how many years? In 2017, you took office, you were inaugurated. Why is it now all of a sudden that it's going to be, that the game changer has arrived? So it's very difficult for Ukrainians and I think their friends to know what Trump can actually deliver and what changes other than those already taking place domestically he will be able to bring. One factor I'd like to bring up, and which didn't figure at all in his inauguration speech or comments later, is that last week we saw him cozying up to China. He phoned the Chinese president last Friday, surprisingly, invited him to the inauguration, managed to get the Chinese leader to send his deputy to the inauguration, or at least that was on the cards. We don't know. I haven't seen it being confirmed whether he was actually there yesterday. Now, and then, we saw that Trump stopped the blockage of TikTok, Chinese run or Chinese owned. And if there is some sort of rapprochement with Beijing, Washington, Beijing, that will put considerable pressure on Moscow, and it will it is already embarrassing Moscow. So that's the new factor in this situation, that suddenly China is appearing, at least, somewhere there as a player in this possible permutation of interests that might force Moscow to be more conciliatory.
So essentially, if I understand you correctly, China is going to play some role in getting Putin to the negotiating table and hopefully achieving some form of peace. Now, most people believe, perhaps with good reason, that Trump is a transactional leader. In other words, he will give something if he believes he's getting a fair deal back. Now, if he does achieve some kind of acceptable, and I put that in quotes, peace agreement in Ukraine, what do you think he might expect back?
Look, I think for him, trade, business, economics are the all-important factor, and looking good, and America looking good. So that's what he'll want. He'll want the sort of the recognition that he's managed to pull off the impossible, perhaps even a Nobel Peace Prize, something along these lines. His ego needs to be satisfied, and he's declared, like Louis XIV, "L'État c'est moi," America is me, I am America. And I think it's about that. For the Ukrainians, on the other hand, they need the security guarantees. Are they going to be given access to NATO? If not today, then somewhere down the road. Or is the Finlandization, if you want, using Cold War terminology, of Ukraine expected? Will Ukraine be allowed, encouraged to join the EU as a sort of, shall we say, a compromise? How much of its territory will it be called on to give up? Just Crimea, just part of the Donbass, or right up to the Dnieper River, Zaporizhia, the Zaporizhia power station, etc. Control of the Black Sea, the Sea of Azov, many questions. So, I don't think that Trump himself is into the detail, the fine deal, because it's a complicated situation there, as we know. So let's hope that his new advisors, people like Kellogg and others, are already on the ball and are trying to work out details that are palatable in some way to both sides.
Certainly, it is, as you say, a complex situation. However, Trump has made quite clear what he wants the outcome to be. Now, he's also made some fairly aggressive statements with regard to the Panama Canal and with regard to Greenland. Do you think this stance, this belligerent stance that he's taking, is also indirectly sending a message to Putin and Xi, saying, well, look, I am prepared to reinforce our rights by force if necessary?
Well, I think if he's doing that, it's going to have a boomerang effect, because Putin is going to say, look, we are interested in securing our borders. He won't say we want to gobble up Ukraine, we don't recognize the Ukrainians as a separate people. He's going to say it's all about security, economic interests, whatever. And look, the American president is saying the same about Greenland, hinting at Canada, certainly taking a very aggressive stance, as he did yesterday on the Panama Canal. But I think he's also noticing, Putin, and shall we say, circled that yesterday, no mention of NATO, no mention of strengthening partnerships, relations with America's traditional allies who have depended on America to a large extent to beef up the security architecture of Europe in the post-war period. And also look at the way that he ignored and didn't invite EU leaders. Okay, Maloney was there, who fortunately for Ukraine is a friend of Ukraine and not only a friend of the American president. Fortunately for Ukraine, the Argentinian president was there, who is also a friend of Ukraine. But where were the other leaders? Where was Macron? Where were the EU leaders, etc.? Where was shall we say, the leading Polish figures of currently in office? So. I think that Moscow is getting mixed signals. It's probably wary, as I say, the Chinese factor, and that America under Trump is not going to take nonsense, shall we say, at least on the public level from anybody. But on the other hand, it's also consoled by the fact that this semi-isolationist, semi-withdrawal of America that Trump has effectively signaled at his inauguration, and his seemingly lack of interest in deepening the partnership with Europe, that is encouraging for them.
I see. Now, is Trump simply saying, look, I'm not interested in Europe or anything outside the US border, or is he simply reprioritizing and saying, well, I'm going to deal with America first, and then we'll come to international affairs? And continuing on that line, you mentioned NATO. Is he going to, when addressing the NATO issue with Europe, is he going to actually divide countries? Poland, for example, is paying close to 5% of its GDP towards NATO, and others are not. What do you think his approach is likely to be?
Well, yes, look, he's been consistent in demanding that NATO countries pay up, as he puts it, and match what America has been putting in all along into the defense of Europe. That's his line. But I think even more worrying for European leaders, well, most of them, is his reliance on the far right. And people like Musk, for example, openly supporting, the far right in Germany or in Italy, where Meloni represents the right, but a moderate right. That is more I think, the lever that he'll use to split Europe, more along the lines of right, centrists, leftists, and say, I'm a conservative. I stand for a conservative order, and we come first. America comes first. You should come first. And this pertains to immigration. This pertains to tariffs, to the way the economy is run, relations not only with Russia but with China, with others, Latin America.
Understood. Well, we look forward to seeing how things unfold. Bohdan Nahaylo, thank you as always for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good day, sir.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Bye bye now. And that's all from us in this episode of World Talks. Goodbye.